I'm Angie Chang, founder of Girl Geek X, and with us today we have some subject matter experts who are now authors. Margaret Aldridge is an accomplished writer and editor in the technology space. She's worked with hundreds of authors at publishers like Wiley, Manning, and the Pragmatic Programmers. And she's joined by engineering leader and author Lee May Nasri and Women Talk Design CEO Daniel Burns. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us. So our talk tonight is about writing books, and it's called From Subject Matter Expert to Published Author. Let's start with Danielle. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your book?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Danielle Barnes. My pronouns are she and her. And as shared, I'm the CEO of an organization called Women Talk Design that's focused on amplifying the voices of women and non-binary folks. And we have a book coming out on Monday, actually, called Present Yourself, Proven Strategies for Authentic and Impactful Public Speaking.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That is definitely a book that I need to read because I speak every now and then, not that often. So I feel like I'm a bit rusty. And I think, even people who speak a lot, we need to polish our presentation skills. So I'm definitely going to be a buyer.
I'm glad to hear that.
And Lima, what about you? Can you tell us a little about yourself and the book that you wrote?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Lima. I'm an engineering leader at Spotify. I wrote a book called Practical A/B Testing with Pragmatic, which gives you a practical approach into how you would incorporate A/B testing at your company. Because A/B testing is not just about the platform, but it's also about the cultural changes that go into incorporating A/B testing into your product development lifecycle. And there's a lot of data and there's not a lot analysis. So it's like a practical introduction to get started.
Wonderful. And you're also working on a new book for us.
Yes, the second one. Sorry, what?
Is that a follow-up to the first one?
Yeah, it's like a little bit more advanced topic. So we're assuming that you've already built an A/B testing platform, and now you're navigating some of the more challenges related to like not having enough users or not having testing space or wanting to improve the data that you get from your experiments. Yeah, it's a good follow-up.
Cool. So it's one thing to actually like work in a particular domain and coach other people in that area, but it's a whole nother thing to write a book. So Lima, how did you actually get started? What was your spark and how did you go about finding a publisher?
That's a really good question. So I think it's that question. I'll break that question into two. For first, what sparked me to write the book? I've been working in tech for about 15 years, and I'd say probably the most exciting aspects of my career have been related to A/B testing. It's a pretty thrilling experience evaluating your change in production with millions of users, and then getting data points that suggest it's performant or it's not performant. It's increasing metrics or it's not increasing metrics. And I think I shortly realized that my favorite aspect of working in tech is the A/B testing phase. So it started with the passion. I was obsessed with the concept of A/B testing, regardless of the context. Like if you're A/B testing content on a video platform or a website or Spotify, like any aspect of A/B testing was interesting to me. And then once I realized that I'm obsessed and I could spend a lot of time and energy writing about it, because it takes a lot of time writing a book, then I experimented with the publishers. So I reached out to a few publishers, and I'd say Pragmatic was the best fit from a ways of working and the history. Like the books that preceded me, I think I read personally. So it was pretty cool to like be part of a company where I was contributing to their catalog. If that makes sense. But the process, and we can talk about this later, I think was most compelling. Like how we worked with the editors, the tools to push changes with your book, etc., was what attracted me the most to Pragmatic.
Right. So I know Pragmatic has a workflow that's a little more friendly for developers. It feels more like,
That's what I love about it. Like, it's not a Google Doc. And I have worked with other publishers where it was a Google Doc. And that was so stressful because I kept replicating the Google Doc because I was scared that like it would become a single point of failure. Whereas I trusted a repository, which I committed to every day once I was done.
Right. And Danielle, your book is not with a publisher. You published it like sort of self-published through your company, correct?
Correct.
And so,
yeah.
so how did that book get started?
Yeah, so Present Yourself actually started as a workshop. So in 2017, we ran the first 2-day Present Yourself program to help women and non-binary folks take an idea that they might have and turn it into a talk and practice it. And we got such great response from that we started running it in different cities. And then in 2020, we moved it online. And then in 2021, we launched it as an 8-week hybrid program that was part asynchronous, part live. And we found when we had to make the asynchronous sessions, we ended up writing out big chunks of the curriculum. And I think there was someone who took that first program that said, this should be a book. And the founder of Women Talk Design, Christina Woodkey, actually helped develop a lot of Present Yourself. And she's self-published several of her own books. And even when we first ran the first Present Yourself, she was like, let's make it a book. And I was like, absolutely not. That sounds like a terrible idea. I don't want to write a book. And, then after all this time and all this feedback we've gotten from alumni, I thought, I really want more people to be able to access this material. And so I never considered myself a writer. I never particularly wanted to write a book, but I one of the pieces that I wrote, actually, I didn't make it into the book, was that my why ultimately outweighed my fear. I was like, I cared so much about this, and I really wanted it to exist that I decided it was worth it to pursue it. And we did talk to a couple of publishers early on. Even though Christina was a big fan of self-publishing, I wanted to do our research and make sure that was the right path. And I spoke mostly to indie and hybrid publishers, none of the really big publishing houses. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately we decided to self-publish for a lot of different reasons. One was that we wanted to show the Women Talk Design community what was possible. Because so many people have book ideas in them, but it can be hard to find a publisher and get connected with one. And we wanted to show the route of self-publishing. So we've done a lot to share our journey along the way. We also really wanted to put together our own team, our editors and designers, and be able to make sure that reflected the community that we had, and have a little bit more creative control in that way. And so it has been quite the journey. I'm actually I have been troubleshooting some things that, we're getting ready to publish on Monday. There's still things going wrong. So there's definitely a lot of benefit working with a publisher, but, going this route allowed us to, like I said, share a lot of that journey, have some more control over pieces, and ultimately have more of the profits go back to the folks who are creating the content. Right.
And, that is the best reason for self-publishing is the creative control aspect, I would say. Because, when you work with a publisher, we do want input. we want input on the content, on the cover, and there's the whole rights thing, when you're self-published, you can sell it as many different places as you want and on your own, however you'd like, for whatever price you'd like. So the control thing is the number one, I think, self-publishing reason. And, I looked at your outline and I was like, they definitely had an editor. This is a very sharp outline. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess maybe one of the misconceptions, and some people, I guess, sometimes do self-publish without an editor, but we still very much had all of people working on a book we just paid them each individually. So we had developmental editors and line editors and copy editors and proofreaders and designers. And so it was definitely not a solo project.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess for some people who don't have the money up front to pay those sorts of people, traditional publishing can be a more attractive option just because the publisher takes on those upfront costs. Although you do pay because you don't get to keep all of the royalties from it when you're publishing. Although actually with Pragmatic, you get 42% on your first book and 50% on every book thereafter. So we're a little better than other publishers who start around 10%, but still, it's not 100%, which is what you get to keep when you're selling it yourself on your own website. So that's definitely a consideration.
One thing I'll add is we had a community, and we kickstarted a lot of the initial funds. We ran a Kickstarter project, and we're able to bring our community in that way. And that also helped us pay for our editor. We had several contributors we wanted to pay for upfront. So that, yes, like there are a lot of different factors that go into this.
So now you have another book idea, which is self-publishing your book. Right?
It's true. That's true. And anything you do, you have a book idea in you to inform the next one. Yeah.
Right. So you didn't actually have to write a proposal and present it to a publisher, but Lima did. What was that like? Was it tough to write the proposal? Did we give you feedback that we asked you to change a lot of stuff?
That's a good question. Was it tough to write the proposal? No, I would say it wasn't. The part that I had to let go of a little bit was it evolved. Like my book evolved from the original idea to what it is today, which I think is a way better idea. And keep in mind, I truly did experiment with publishers, and one publisher was taking it a total different direction. Pragmatic it was taking it another direction, and I picked the direction that I liked. But yeah, I think the proposal itself is I wouldn't, for folks that are interested in writing a book, don't be too intimidated. You talk a little bit about yourself, why you should write the book. You reference other competing books that are related in the topic, and then you draft an outline. And I think the outline probably sounds a lot more intimidating than it is. It's not. It's the chapters that you think that you'll incorporate, and that can evolve. It's just because that's what you propose, it doesn't mean it's what you're going to end up with. So I think that's something to keep in mind, is it's not set in stone forever. Just put pen to paper and see what you churn out. But the part that I think is most interesting is how it evolved based on the feedback, and how letting go of what I originally had in mind actually helped the book be better.
Right. That's a very interesting point, because we got some people who come to us after they've already written their book, and we're like, oh, darn, that's great. We're happy that you wrote a book, but now we don't have any chance to give you our feedback because it's done.
Yeah, I think I wrote one chapter for my first proposal. I think I wrote one chapter that accompanied the outline.
Yeah, so I'd say my advice to people who are thinking about writing a book, especially a technical book or just a nonfiction book, is to go ahead and just write the proposal and maybe a few pages from the book to give publishers an idea of your writing style. But don't go any further than that, because publishers really do like to, on nonfiction books and technical books, they like to work with you on a chapter by chapter basis from the very start, to shape the idea. So it's really not that much work up front to propose your idea. And the worst that can happen is, they say no. In the case of Pragmatic, I always try to say no, but, no, but how about this idea? Or would you be open to changing it around a little bit? So, yeah. So
I can add briefly. Okay. I can just, even as a self-published author, I actually did fill out the proposal, a proposal template. I had talked to one of the publishers and they sent me theirs, and I found it to be really helpful in just helping me shape my own ideas. All of those things. If you're going to be selling your own book, you want to have that competitive analysis, and you want to be thinking through who is your audience. And so I particularly found that helpful, and we gave it to our developmental editor with our first draft of the manuscript, so that she could say, oh, okay, well, if this is who your target audience is and this is what you're trying to achieve, that actually doesn't match this of what you're saying, or here would be my recommendation for reordering some of this stuff.
Right. And that's very important. Your audience, you have to know who you're talking to, and you have to realize that even though your topic might appeal to other, audiences, like Lima's book, like maybe it would appeal to like some middle management people who
Totally.
aren't actually doing A/B testing, but that's not the primary audience, and you really need to laser focus your voice and who you're talking to on the primary audience. And if other people pick it up and get benefit out of it, great. So I'm glad that you brought up the point of audience, definitely. So as far as like how, like when you're writing the book, just basically like how do you manage your time to do it? Because I know both of you have full-time jobs. How does that work?
I can go first real quick.
Oh,
Does that sound good? It's a great question. Yeah, I love my day job, so definitely focus during the day on my working at Spotify. To be honest, I think there's like, from what I've gathered, I think there's two types of writers, and I'm curious where Danielle falls in this. I'm more of a marathoner, so I'll spend weekends like working, writing, editing. Like I'll spend Saturday, Sunday, I'll just like allocate towards working on my book. I just don't have the energy in me at 8 p.m. after a long work day to write. Writing takes so much brain power, and editing I think takes even more brain power because you're meeting the needs of, you're trying to understand, like your development editor wants this, but it's like hard to like fold in that change. And then like you need to be in the right mindset. And so I focus on the weekends. There's at least for a year, almost every weekend, not everyone, but almost every weekend was dedicated to working on my book with breaks. Like I would go for a run, then work on my book, go for a walk, then work on my book. So that was my style. Daniel, what was your style?
Yeah, I agree that I cannot work at the end of the day. I'm like definitely a morning person. And it took me a while to figure out what was going to work for me. I am lucky that I was able to do this as part of Women Talk Design, which is my full-time job. And so I decided at one point I wasn't making enough progress. I was going to take off a week of doing anything else, and I was just going to write. And I went to a coffee shop. I'm going to do this. And like, I was going to write for like an hour and a half. And then I was like, all right, I can't, like, I just couldn't focus for that long. It was too hard. And so I think that there was a lot of experimenting of trying to figure out what worked for me. I also had a baby in the middle of the process. So it was, I also had to figure out like, okay, who I was and what I was capable of before I had the baby also changed once my family was very different. And so I think the biggest like thing that I learned in that process is to be patient with myself and to realize that there wasn't one right way. I had someone recommend to me, oh, you don't have to write in order, just like, write different ideas and then you can piece it together afterwards. But that didn't work for me. And I just kept getting stuck. And I was like, no, I need to write linearly. I need to start in the beginning and write all the way through. And so, yes, very much appreciate that there's different ways to do it.
That's interesting that you both that didn't find it possible to work on the book after work.
Yeah, I'm a manager, so it just like my day emotionally takes so much out of me that like I just didn't have anything. Like I just like, and I'm an introvert too, so I just needed to like sit in silence or something. And so writing is it's just a lot of inner dialogue that's going in, a lot of thinking and energy. So yeah, I would love to be the type of person that would wake up every morning and just spend an hour working on it like they do in the movies, but weekends.
I write. Oh, I'm sorry. I write a lot of blog posts, and sorry for talking over you. I apologize. I was just going to say I write a lot of blog posts and things like that. And I find that I really do my best writing like early in the morning. So I would wake up at like 5 a.m. if I was going to do an article, for just my own blog, like writing about baking and random things. I would do it like super early at like 5 o'clock in the morning and then, start my day job. So yeah, everybody's completely different. Some people like to write in sprints where they spend like 20 minutes writing and then, go back and do something else, or Pomodoro, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's interesting. But it's amazing that you both found the time to write a book while doing like so many other things. I am like completely amazed that you could have a full-time job, a baby, and write a book, Danielle. So that's insane. So now that you've written a book, or are almost done writing the book in your case, do you find that things have changed as far as like, has it opened any doors for you? Has it changed your outlook on your career, your profession, like what you're able to do, things like that? Lima?
Yeah, I think, yes, definitely in two ways for me personally. One way, I'm giving workshops at universities. So for example, I gave a workshop last year at UPenn or at Wharton about A/B testing. And the thing that's really neat about A/B testing is it's so applicable to anybody. Like engineers build the platform, product owners leverage it to evaluate their ideas, managers, same thing, like CTOs, if their companies aren't doing it, they want to do it. So that's the luxury with A/B testing, is that it opened doors for like workshops at universities, which is super cool. That's always an avenue I want to like venture into. The other door that it opened up, which I think is like I'm so grateful for this, because I'm so obsessed with A/B testing. My manager sees that and then gives me the space to focus that more at Spotify. And I do think that like the book was a conduit for that change. Like I think it gives more credibility, but it also, at a certain point, if you're writing every weekend about A/B testing, you're thinking about A/B testing a lot.
Right.
It's just like ingrained in me. Like, I mean, I think I've said the word experimenting in different contexts, like at least 4 times today, like in this session. So it opens, like, it gave me the credibility at work to then focus more on things that I'm more interested in. I mean, again, I have a manager that's amazing and lets me do that, but I think the book helped that case, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Danielle, what about you?
Yeah, and I just want to share that I had the chance to work with a lot of authors through Women Talk Design, and that's something that I've heard as well. It's like, talk about and write about the work that you want to be doing, not just like what you're doing already, because
I love that.
then, yeah, folks start to see you for that and reach out to you, and you can get more opportunities. So, the book, it comes out next week, so we'll see, I guess, what comes from it. But just already, like one of the things that I've noticed, we've been talking about the book a lot. And when people know that you're working on this thing, they want to support you. And so we've, gotten connected to podcast hosts, and I've spoken on more podcasts than I've ever had, getting to share this idea, and have gotten to meet just like so many wonderful people. I've actually had a lot of folks from throughout my career also reach back out when they've seen that I'm working on the book, and like use it as an opportunity to reconnect. And so I'm excited to see what comes from this. I think we're still very much at the early stages, but something that we did that I would recommend to others is to talk about the book even before. I know there was a question, I think, about marketing too, like before you release it, which I think both helps with marketing, but then also, can help build some of those opportunities before the book even comes out.
Awesome. Well, we did get a question. How do you prioritize writing a book and working it into your schedule? From Michelle, and I think we answered that. I'm not sure if maybe Michelle wasn't around, but yeah, all of us sort of say that we can't put any energy into writing after work. We all seem to like need a dedicated time set aside for that. So I don't know if that's true for like everybody, but in this room it is. So any other questions? I don't see any. I think that was the only one. We only have about 5 minutes left. So if you guys want to share anything about your book, like maybe like where to get it, or maybe something, just an insight that you gained through writing the book, why don't we use the last few minutes for that? Danielle, you want to go first on that?
Yes. Sorry. Can you repeat the question one more time?
I'm saying just sort of wrapping it up, like tell people where they can get your book and maybe share just an insight that you gained from writing it that you didn't have before.
Yeah, sure. So I have, let's see, right here, this is what our book looks like. Oh, it's a blurry background, but present yourself. If you go to, and there's my dog because we're getting book deliveries. I'm going to pass it to Lima because my dog's going to take a second and then I'll come back.
Sounds good. I can go real quick. So my book, Practical A/B Testing, you can get on the pragprod.com and on Amazon. So check it out, please. I have a few jokes in there. So if you read through the chapters and you see little spots of jokes, you'll get an insight into my humor. And then insight that I would share, I'd say writing a book has made me a better writer for everything, for emails, for documents at work. I mean, I'm constantly writing documents to pitch ideas, proposals, push ideas forward. I would say all of the insights that I gained from working with my editor, Vanya, at Pragmatic has made me a better writer. And the better writer you are, the better you'll be able to do in so many facets of life, just convincing and persuading people because you're good at writing.
Awesome. So apparently a bunch of more questions popped up that I guess they were in the chat, but I was on the Q&A. Any platforms or mediums you all recommend to start writing on before you test the idea of a book? So like, I guess blogs and that sort of thing. Are you guys doing any blogging, and have you found a preferred platform if you are?
Substack, like I have a newsletter. It's called Experimenting. Do you have something similar, Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really great to be able to run the workshop first for years. I think that was a big way that we found that there was interest in this topic, and we refined the topics a lot, and it informed the outline of the book. So that, I think that was big. And even now, right, I'm writing on LinkedIn. I'm trying to share more about what I've learned in the process. So actually, for anyone who's curious about self-publishing, if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I've been writing lessons that I learned about the process. But I think it's a great and really important idea to start sharing your ideas early, and by writing, by giving talks, that can help develop the book. And that was, I think one of the big lessons that I've had through writing the book is just how important it is to bring in people to support you. And by sharing your ideas early, you can do that.
Right. Very good. Lima, there's one directed at you that says, as a technical female, how have you found the marketing side of writing a book to be?
That's a really good question. It is, and a vulnerable answer is I was shy at the beginning because it is a very technical concept, and I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I hate those words. So, but that left. Like, I think once it was out in the wild, and once I got pretty good feedback from colleagues and from friends, I then started pushing marketing a lot more. But I was timid at the beginning. Like, I was more timid than I probably should have been. And I hope not to be like that for the second book, but it is hard. I mean, there's
and I think the thing that some authors don't realize is that people like to celebrate with you your accomplishments.
Yeah, a lot of support.
Don't be shy about it. And also, like, while you're at it, like, boost other people. Like, if you see somebody who's written something, they're not your competition. You support everybody, and good things will happen. So it looks like we're out of time. Angie is back. Hi, Angie.
Thank you all for all your insights and encouragement for us to become subject matter experts that are recognized and published. We'll be looking forward to reading your books, the ones that are coming out soon and the ones you've already published.